Indigenous Land-Based Healing by Sheila Nikashi. I will be presenting a land-based program created from my First Nations Moose Factory. Land-based healing. In an effort to address the intergenerational wounds of residential schools, elders are making use of bush schools in order to transmit their cultural knowledge not only to the generation of their children, but also to that of their grandchildren. As a result, some elders have decided to take on the role of healer and return to the land with the Indigenous youth. Land-based healing. I'll be discussing the introductions, why practice, the practices mainly in the mental health, sharing stories to the land, a success story, other programs available, youth video on land-based learning. Introduction. In the Moose Cree, Moose Factory and Moosonee area, Project George was created in 2009 to address the large number of youth suicides occurring in the local Moose Factory and Moosonee area. With advice from Elder George E. Eacham, Charlie Chichu spearheaded the project with the goal of reconnecting the youth to the land and Cree culture in order to prevent further fatalities. The program aims to create a community where youth are hopeful about their future and strong and resilient in dealing with life's challenges. The funding, primarily through donations and part of the Government of Ontario and all other season camp, is run by volunteers and guided by the experience of elders, allowing kids to learn about and gain experience with traditional Cree bush skills. All youths from ages 12 to 20 are able to participate. The 6 components of this land-based program is the first is to transfer of specific knowledge and skills such as hunting, fishing, trapping, and camping. While some of these skills are specifically taught, many are learned through observation and collaboration. Learning skills in the bush facilitates a sense of identity and self-confidence that extends beyond the bush. As one commented, being out in the bush provides me with a sense of identity. Thus is an integral piece of Indigenous culture and way of life. It provides you with a sense of pride and esteem by learning to do things out in the bush and transferring this knowledge into your own life. For example, in pursuing an education, the strength, courage, and diligence needed can be compared to the strength required to track a moose. 6 components. Again, the second component of the land-based program identified was described as a teamwork. You're out there, you're sharing duties, and that's the best way I can explain it. It's a teamwork. The collaborative working builds upon the sense of connectivity with the land, with feeling part of a bigger picture and trusting and relying on one another. The third component of the relationships with facilitators and other participants. These relationships, which develop through shared time and collaborative activities, that relationship that develops because of that dependency on one another to be able to function in the bush. Between facilitators and participants, I've had kids, they've noted that they've had kids that don't have a dad say, "You're the closest thing to a dad." I kind of become a parent figure to these kids during these programs. Between participating family members, there's a lot of communication in the bush between family members and between fellow participants. The first time these 2 children were together, they sort of looked at each other for 5 minutes, 5 to 10, 15 minutes later, they started working together. It doesn't take long. These relationships provide opportunities for mutual conversations and support towards the goal of recognizing one's connection to the community. As commented, Aboriginal culture is defined by having a connection and relationship with the land, but this is just one aspect. You have family and community, a family that are next door. Without knowing these relationships and knowing how you're connected with other, you become isolated and alone. This loneliness seems to be a big factor that is affecting the youth. They lack awareness about the relationships that exist with others. This lack of awareness also extends to culture and being a part of the land. Fourth component identified in this program, participants involved in decision making. Rather than having a fixed curriculum or set of activities for all, the program allows participants to choose. As one commented, all these activities that we participate in are provided for them and selected by them. It gave them a bit of ownership. This is what I want to learn. This is what I need to learn. So that made things a little bit easier in terms of communicating and relating to them. Fifth component of the land-based program is the involvement of elders. This was seen as a necessary component that facilitated the sense of intergenerational connection. The elders' level of activity in the bush was seen as unimportant. A good elder doesn't even say much. What mattered was his presence, just sitting there with a smile on their face. Lastly, the older individual emphasized this land-based program combined traditional practices and new outdoor activities. As commented, I think it's important to mention that the land-based program isn't all traditional Indigenous stuff. The kids love wakeboarding, tubing, target practicing, volleyball, swimming, which is done in the bush. It isn't all just hunting and trapping. It gives them an opportunity to do something they look forward to and that they simply enjoy doing. Additional to the 6 components identified by the participants, that there are noteworthy features revealed in the conversation, one obtained to the recruitment of participants is commented. We look at the kids who don't play sports, don't go to gatherings or dances. We find them in the schools or at homes. It is difficult to take a kid into the bush who is suicidal, as we aren't social workers. We always have to look out for our program because taking suicidal kids can result in many bad things happening. If a kid who is threatening to commit suicide, we don't take them out in the bush yet. We wait for whoever can give us the green light. Examples, the counselors. Participants also know that their connection with the adolescents involved in the land-based program may continue after their shared time in the bush. The kids come out and see us. They continue to keep in contact. I think how I am friendly, humorous, engaged, and a lot of laughter has a lot to do with why the kids want to keep in contact. As noted, was desire to expand the land-based program so it could include parents, caregivers, as commented. I'm heading in the direction of getting the family unit, or at least the caregivers, working with youth. I'd like to make that step in getting caregivers involved, land-based activities. I think it's a strong neutral base or environment for which a lot of people can initiate healing. A natural environment such as the bush is more conducive for other people to begin talking. In the introduction, the land-based program includes activities that take place on the land. The youth treatment centers and land-based programs are delivered in the local Indigenous language. Language is foundational to delivering cultural interventions on the land, especially knowledge related to place names, cultural practices, social organization, and local history. Taught and practiced within the context of trapping, fishing, and hunting, maintaining the camp, a medicine walk, arts and crafts workshops. Ceremonial activities such as sweats, blanket ceremony, pipe ceremony, smudging, storytelling, legends, and teachings components can be viewed as a culturally specific, therapeutic, and educational experience. Why practice? When asked to describe the benefits of the land-based program, we identified the focus on health rather than mental illness. As one comments, counselors are not always the key in helping individuals with their own problems. This is where pathologizing our youth and their self-harm can become an issue. Maybe it's not a counselor that is needed to treat them. It's establishing a connection, having these kids go out into the bushes that help them alleviate their pain. Believe that a land-based project will take away from that stigma of mental illness and treatment, where an individual or family member of the community member won't hold back. Why practice land-based programs? Seen as facilitating connection to Cree ways and culture, it teaches them about our ways, our culture, nature, as commented. You develop a true respect for nature. It's not all physical being out there. A big part of being on the land is the spiritual, emotional, and mental impact it provides us, family and community. We're all related, and being aware of that, bring that togetherness identity. Being out in the land connects with your own self, your own identity, and spirituality. This connection to the land is what paves the spirituality. It's not God or Jesus that is out in the bush. It's the relationship that develops to the land as well as pride and self-esteem. Within the mental health practice is argued that conventional Western approaches to mental health are opposite with the beliefs and practices of many Indigenous people. The research suggests that forms of mental health treatment considered alternative from Western perspective, including traditional healing land-based programs, have had positive effects on mental health with the Indigenous communities. Several reasons for these findings, as discussed, if colonization is fundamentally about dispossessing Indigenous peoples from their land, decolonization must involve forms of education that reconnect Indigenous peoples to land and the social relations, knowledges, languages that arise from the land. Colonization is well known to have disconnected Indigenous peoples from their cultural histories. Research on the topic of the cultural continuity addresses the saliences of disconnection in relation to mental health, most saddening regarding youth suicide. Compelling evidence has been found to demonstrate that increasingly cultural continuity decreases the occurrence of suicide. There's a growing awareness that possessions from the land has been a significant factor in the development of addiction and other mental health problems among Indigenous people. Dispossessions affects individuals' health by altering the fundamental cultural connections between land and identity, the special and spiritual relationship with the land that sustains a sense of well-being. Mental health and healing have some sense of renewed contact with the land, regaining what was lost. Perhaps the key feature of land-based interventions. Research suggesting that fostering positive relationships is the principal goal of Indigenous healing. The degree to which typical health interventions affirm individually may run occur to these rational emphasis. Indeed, even the structure of many mental health interventions wherein treatment occurs in isolation from community seems problematic from this viewpoint. Regarding suicide specifically, point out that the Western approach to suicide prevention, which involves referring the suicidal person to the mental health system, could actually further alienate the person who is suicidal from the social and cultural context in which effective assistance is most likely to emerge. Yet, physical isolation in the Western sense is not the only issue with this form of treatment. In an Indigenous context, isolation has more to do with the lack of what is often considered a spiritual connection between individuals. It is therefore likely that programs that help reestablish comparison connections among Indigenous people may be both healing and preventative with respect to mental health problems. Shared stories to the land. It was my parent who took me out there. I remember going out there with the dog team and my granddad while he went to get his wood, and it wasn't much what I was doing out on the land. It was just being in touch, connecting with the natural environment. It's almost like therapy, but you're just sitting here and you're with your own thoughts and you're just taking in everything that's around you. Shared stories to the land. Again, I went on I went out with the dog team also. We would leave in the middle of March, go spring hunting, and come back in the middle of May. And I don't ever remember being bored. You don't cut wood all day, you don't fish all day, you don't trap all day. It's just being out there. We were starting to get into alcohol and drugs when we were teenagers, but when we go to the bush, I wouldn't miss the alcohol and drugs. It was, I don't know, so peaceful. One successful story I added. There was also a compelling story related by the current program director regarding one program participant, letter B. His name is B. We picked up a young man, A, between the ages of 18 and 19 years old. I did not know at the time. I found out later that A tried hanging himself twice. His dad died at 14. His mom is incapacitated and at home. She was never really there. He was looked after by an uncle who's an alcoholic, so everything was stacked against him. He tried hanging himself. First time he tried hanging himself, this is a story, the rope broke. He went back the next day. He used a wire, an extension cord. The branch broke, and he chuckles. And when he's telling me the story, he says, I told myself, someone's trying to tell you something there. And I said, I know. That's what I was thinking. And he said, there I am, lying on the ground after bouncing off the ground, falling 10 feet. I'm grasping for air. Here I am trying to kill myself and trying to grasp for air. I should have just laid down and stopped breathing. And then I walked in, not knowing what A just did a few days before that. We took him out. We had a chance to work with A about 1 month. Every trip he came out, I saw something in A. And I applied for a grant before that, and the grant came in and I could hire a young man for 6 months. We got back to work and we got him away from place B. Got him in the bush. After 6 months, he got extended for another 6 months. I told him, I just found out you don't have your high school. And he says, no, I'm going to have to lay you off unless you go over to the education building and sign up. There's a crash course, finish your high school. I knew he had it in him. He has 6 credits. He was 6 credits short. I said, get your 6 credits, get your high school. It'll take you 3 months and you can continue working here. He said, but what about my job today? I said, you can do 40 hours and 7 days, weekends and evenings. He said, okay. He worked like a dog, school 6 hours a day. He did not know of bluffing. He did not know I was bluffing. He graduated from high school. I went up to him a couple of months later and said, you ever think of going to college? He says, no. I said, I think you should go to college. He says, what am I going to take? I said, I don't know. You tell me, what do you want to do? He says, I want to be a policeman. Okay, I told him. I'll give you a hand. A year and a half later, he's accepted to go to college in place A. 2 years later, he graduated with honors, topped the class. And I called him and said, what are you going to do now? And he says, oh, I don't know. I'm looking for a job. I applied everywhere. I told him, I just got a grant to hire an assistant. You want to come and work in place B? He was in place B 2 days later. He's still with me. He will not leave. He wanted to be a cop, but now he's still with me. So that's one successful story. Other programs that are offered similar to this within Ontario or in Canada. The first one is called the Take a Kid Trapping and Harvesting Program. Located in Northwest Territories, was created in 2002 in response to the fact most trappers and harvesters were older adults. The goal of the project is to promote youth involvement in these traditions through the transfer of knowledge, specifically by introducing Northwest Territories youth to traditional life skills practices of hunting, trapping, fishing, and outdoor survival. The other program, the Take a Kid Trapping and Harvest program, same program. A unique feature of this program is that projects are mainly carried out through schools as well as other Indigenous organizations. As an example, 46 trapping, harvesting, and hunting projects were carried out in 5 regions of the Northwest Territories in 2013 to 2014. Specific activities for youth, often provided using the knowledge of community elders, include setting traps, nets, preparing pelts, and learning about navigation and survival skills. The other is the Caring of Circle Within program, located in the Yukon Territory and developed in 2010. Community to focus on the complex needs of individuals suffering from substance abuse, grief, violence, and the after effects of residential schools. Its mission is to provide a supportive, land-based, holistic, and compassionate environment based on the integration of traditional and modern knowledge in order to create balance and self-empowerment. The Caring in the Circle Within program is run by individuals specifically in both traditional and Western methods to provide a balanced approach to treatment. A key aspect of the healing process is believed to involve redefining one's identity as a First Nation person. As a result, traditional activities such as hunting, fishing, canoeing, and gathering medicines, as well as beading, singing, and making drums and knives, are a core part of the program. In addition, the camp includes learning to foster connections through problem solving, relationship building to such a degree that during the pilot program, individuals formed social support groups that stayed in touch after the program ended. The other program, the Chesapeake Land-Based Healing Program, located in Quebec, was developed in 2012 by the Chesapeake Committee alongside their department. It is considered to be the first formal and structural land-based program in Cree ancestral territory. The program are based on Elder Eddie Pash's land-based healing model, which is meant to be used as a framework for communities to adapt to suit their own needs. Designed to help individuals struggling with substance abuse and various types of trauma, including residential schools, by aiming to strengthen the participants to lead a healthy, fulfilling life. The Chesapeake Land-Based Healing Program, funded on the Cree view of wellness, which reflects the belief that the land and cultural traditions have healing power. The 10-day camp is held on Cree hunting grounds and run by an elder, program coordinator, healer, counselor, office manager, and camp helpers. During the program, individuals are taught Cree history and connection to nature, engaged in group discussions, see a traditional council healer using Cree and sometimes Western treatment methods, and gain experience hunting, trapping, setting up camp, and making tools. The Chesapeake Land-Based Healing Program affirmed the health and healing potential of reconnecting Indigenous people to the fundamental relationship with their land. These programs also heed the call for strengthening ethnocultural identity and community integration in order to improve the mental health of Indigenous communities, as noted. Aboriginal notions of personhood root identity and a person's connections to the land and environment. Therefore, the natural environment provides not only substances, but also sources of soothing, emotional regulation, guidance, and healing. Science outside land-based learning. Today is National Indigenous Peoples Day. We are given the opportunity to celebrate the knowledge, cultural achievements, and resilience of Indigenous peoples in Canada. Today is a call for each and every Canadian to reflect on Canada's Indigenous history and efforts in reconciliation. I am going to play this video, and it's based on one of their camps, their learning base.
Everyone, this is Sugos, and this is a little little video on our experiences with Indigenous matcha.
I really appreciate it, and I give them whatever they need to provide.
We also have the opportunity to give our cameras.
Let's go.
We're not. Look, I need to know how.